Hospitals have always been such a huge source of anxiety for so many of us, and why not? Around every single crevice, nook, and cranny, an unknown person next to you could lie some unknown disease, some kind of sacred bacteria. You're basically putting your life in the hands of the people around you, assuming that they will cover their mouth when they sneeze. And with this third issue of the HELLRAISER comic book franchise, this is only made even more true. As we follow a man named Vincent, after studying abroad for college in India, he contracts leprosy, and through this, his body is fighting himself. He's lost his fingers, his skin is becoming scaly, and instead of getting the medication that he actually needs, he hears of one of the Le Mans configurations and he goes out on a journey to find one of these things. Well, when he finally does, it's already too late. He can't feel, he has no fingers to work the puzzle, and he only relies on somebody else to do this for him. The rest of the story is basically just going to be about a nurse named Mary who comes along and kind of forms a connection with this man. Now, one more interesting about this story is that they don't really hide the Le Mans configuration at all. It's right out there in the open, and I'd also like to say that this is one of the better stories as it wraps itself up neatly. It introduces us to a whole new cenobite that I've never seen before, and on top of this, the artwork is just very nice. So without a doubt, the name of this story is called Diver's Hands, and it all begins with Mary coming into this new hospital and meeting the head director of this section of it. These are our patients who are in the most advanced stages of Hansen's disease. These are the patients who need the most care, to whom you've been assigned. I see. And who is he? And from here, we are greeted to our first sight of Vincent himself. He's sitting there, this bald-headed man. You can tell that his skin is beginning to recede and becoming harsh and scaly. And in front of him lies one of the Le Mans configurations. One that we have seen before, but with an entirely new, beautiful color palette. Instead of being the awesome black and gold box that we've always known through the comics and the movies, this one is more of an ivory and rosewood. And I gotta say, it's beautiful. It makes me want to 3D print one of these things and paint it. And maybe in one of these future weekend episodes, we could possibly do that with all of you. Let me know if you'd be interested in anything like that. He touches the configuration with the gnarled stumps left to him. He cannot experience the angles, the grooves, the etchings he knows so well. And after we're greeted to Vincent, we see Mary and the head director standing next to each other, and he's just explaining to him that this man actually came up from a Mexico clinic. They sent him back because he's an American citizen, and it actually turns out that he's a very educated fellow. And this director has always wondered why this man never got treatment, that this is a disease that can be staved off pretty well with the right kinds of medications, and he just doesn't understand. But we see Vincent toying around with his box just a little bit more, and Mary wants to know what this is all about. He imagines he can feel the puzzle in his hands. They are no longer his. Amazing flesh, questing for the solution, wonderful digits solving the problem, problems within problems. And after this nice greeting with Vincent and Mary is going to make her first one-on-one association with this man. She goes to his door and she starts knocking on it. Vincent, I've brought you your medication. Watching her, he wonders how the door fell beneath her rapping, tapping knuckles. He wonders if there is pain. And we see Vincent tilt his head back and Mary taking this eyedropper and putting the medication in, and Mary begins to ask about this beautiful box in front of him. What is that box you're always carrying around? Where did you get it? It's strange. He waits for her to touch it, wanting her to. It's a Le Mans configuration, Mary. I outran this goddamn disease hunting for it. It is my salvation. And after these two first get acquainted for the first time, we start seeing this bit of a montage going on. They're starting to become closer friends. You see her wrapping this cool fabrics around his body. And little by little, we see them talking, and soon we see them sitting in the courtyard as Vincent is telling her a little story about desire. A very common theme in the HELLRAISER universe, and almost always what finally unlocks any of these puzzles, whether it be an entire building, a song, an origami piece of paper, or one of these classic boxes. Desire is the name of the game here, and if you want it enough, you shall get it. But after all this, the director kind of notices that Mary and Vincent have been spending a lot of time together, and he has something to say to her. You're doing a fine job, Mary, but it's come to our attention that you're spending entirely too much time with Vincent at the expense of the other patients. I'm sorry, Dr. Watkins. I wasn't aware that there was a problem. I'm sure you didn't realize it, but you need to devote more attention to some of our other patients in the future. I will, doctor. I will. And you see Mary looking out the window, and from here she can't really seem to get the image of this box or Vincent himself out of her head, and this begins to start seeping into her love life. As she's sitting with her boyfriend in the room and he's trying to make love to her, she seems cold and irritated towards him, and this is starting to drive him crazy. Okay, what's wrong, Mary? What's bugging you? You're as cold as ice. It's nothing really. I'm just thinking about work. About, Vincent. Dr. Watkins says, Jesus, Mary, can't you leave your work at work? I'm trying to make love to you. Can't you forget about your patients? Again, she feels warm hands on her, pulling her to him, and this time, she is there. And as she is giving in to the pleasure and forgetting her work, you come to this panel where it actually shows Vincent on top of her, giving her the old in out and out. And she does seem to enjoy this, and it only goes to show how much this man has seeped into her mind, and it just kind of shows that Vincent is a man of charisma? Or is it just the box calling to her this entire time, knowing that only her fingers can unlock its hellish reward? But as Mary continues to have these visions, she finally goes to work and she decides to ask Vincent just what this box is all about. Tell me about the box, Vincent. I want to know. Alright, I'll tell you, but you have to know, it's not a box, it's a puzzle. It's an insidious story, really. Quite like the damn microbacterium that's killing me. I was in Mexico. I contracted a disease some years back. I can't say when. 2 to 10 years before my balls fell off. I guess I was a student, studying Indian culture. There were jungles. I liked it. Despite the heat and the wet air, I felt alive there. Like I hadn't ever before. Or since. I must have come into contact with somebody who had the bacillus. At any rate, at the time I noticed the first lesions on my skin, the nodules on my nose, I discovered something else. And as Mary is inching closer and closer, you see their hands touch upon the box. And as their fingers are touching, Vincent knows that his skin must feel really harsh, very scaly, but he can't help but admire that she still has the ability to touch, and he wonders what the sensation might be like. I was told about and I'd read about a man named Lamarckand, of something that he had designed, Lamont configurations, and I knew that I was saved. What do you mean saved? You're not an ignorant man. My God, you had to know that Hansen's disease can be arrested with treatment, not the kind of help I truly needed. Why merely arrest the disease when I can rid myself of it entirely? I had to have this, my Lamont configuration. There are no sulfa drugs in the places I had to search, and all the while leprosy kept pace with me. And when it looked hopeless, when it looked as if I had wasted what time was left in my life, I discovered the Lamarckand had once lived here, at the center. I don't know why or for how long he was here. I only knew that he had been here, had worked here, so I came. And I found my Lamarckand cube. But by then, my hands were useless. I cannot work the puzzle. His gaze belongs to her now, to her own hands. Vincent stares not at his precious configuration, but at a new prize, the slim, beautiful fingers that are poised above the puzzle. And as he just keeps going on about how he came around to have this cube, Mary is getting incredibly irritated. She doesn't understand why this man would basically let this disease take over his entire life, to basically inch his way towards death, when there is such easily made paths to fighting this, to living a decent life. And then after all this, was it even worth it? This man has lost his fingertips, his skin is betraying him, and he no longer can touch anything, and it all just doesn't quite make sense to her. How, Vincent? How can this help you? It doesn't make any sense. He sees her touching the edges, the groove surface. The puzzle's a key, Mary. It opens a door to another place. There are people there, cenobites, and they can repair my body. Perhaps give me a new one. And honestly, this is one of the first times where the cenobites or the cube itself has been described so easily. This man doesn't really seem to be hiding anything. It's not being hidden in some creepy house or being kept in some other country in some unknown chest. It's just right there out in the open, and you can tell that maybe Vincent has some kind of plan, like almost like he wants somebody to come along and feel incredibly curious about this thing, to want to solve its edges. But as he's explaining all this, we actually see some cenobites in the lighting behind them, and it only shows that something is about to go terribly wrong. I don't believe you, Vincent. It doesn't make any sense. It's a fantasy. And still, he clings to the memory of his body, of pleasure and pain. It's not a fantasy. It's real. I don't believe you. I don't care if you believe me. Just help me work the puzzle. Just help me, please. And Vincent can tell that Mary's right on the cusp of actually helping him with this thing, and it's not really made sure whether he knows that it's going to be treacherous for her or for him, or if he really believes that if she opens it, he'll get a new body. But eventually, Mary does agree to this, and they end up going into a secret part of this hospital, a place where nobody really even knows that this exists. Even Mary herself, somebody who works there, has never seen this sect of the hospital. Where are we going, Vincent? A room where nobody will interrupt us. I've never been down here. I don't even know where this is. Oh, it's a big place. The center. There are places here even I've never seen. Now have a seat on the floor. That's right. Take it. Hold it in your hands. Hold it like that. Yes. Yes. And as Vincent is getting incredibly excited, he's ready for his new body. He's ready for any kind of salvation, really for his choices to be justified. satisfied and to know that he didn't waste the last years of his life on some imaginary fictitious box. But as they're doing this, he can't stop imagining how her body must feel with the cool drafts of air coming around or the hardwood floor beneath her. He yearns so much to have these desires, to have these sensations running through his body once again. And as he's sitting behind Mary, they're both kind of crisscross applesauce on the floor, and he's holding her by the hips, holding her hands in place to try and help her solve this puzzle, and he can't help but getting more and more excited. And throughout all this, we're getting even more narration about what is really going on. The material moves smoothly beneath her touch, as if it's his own volition. Vincent guides her along. In spite of the disease, Vincent can almost recall what it was like to feel another in his living embrace, and soon he may once more know the feel of one texture against another. And finally, they end up opening this box, and in we see a new cenobite arise. And this one actually looks very different. It's not so ghoulish. It's not just a man taking other people's faces and slapping on his own. It's not a man covered in chains, or a woman with their open throat exposed. It's actually more of an alien looking creature. Its body is very tight, has these giant shoulder pauldrons, and it really does look more like the aliens from It Came From Mars, if that is the name of that movie. I'm sure you'll know by the clip. And I just found this design to be very interesting, and I'm very curious to learn more about these things in the future. But as all this is happening, Mary gets down on her knees, not knowing exactly what is going on, but you can tell she is absolutely petrified. Dark figures stride out of the light, but not the angel-like creatures whom Mary would have expected. And as these creatures are striding out, this creature actually grabs Mary by the back of the head, and from here, we basically know that Vincent is an utter piece of shit who has totally betrayed Mary's trust. Ah, sweet Vincent, I see you have brought us another. Aren't you the dear one? How her pretty hair feels in my strong hands. Imagine, sweet Vincent, imagine. And obviously this creature is just toying with Vincent, trying to make him aware that he could have a new body, that he could have these sensations back, but it is all up to the cenobite himself, and he just keeps on going on to play with this fact. Vincent, what's happening? What is he doing to me? Oh my, didn't dear Vincent tell you? He has a deal with us, my sweet. I have to do this, Mary. They'll make me one of them. I'll become a cenobite, never to sicken, never to die. They'll take me in if I keep bringing them people. People like you. Yes, such a deal with sweet Vincent. He brings his flesh to punish into submission. Someday we may bring him among our numbers. Remind me to thank the little bacillus rod that floats in his stinking body. And now, his orders scream, as does Mary. The flesh is punished. And in every bellow, in every anguished noise, Vincent tries to follow Mary's pain. And from here, we just see this monster straight up bite off Mary's ear, alright? He Mike Tyson's her ass. And it's basically just a horror show of this man using the whole ultra violence against this woman. He's tearing off bits of flesh, and he's basically just doing whatever he wants, whatever a cenobite does. But this seems to be more one of the simpler creatures that we've seen in these comic books. He whispers to her ear. The Lamont configuration makes a wonderful arc, dark droplets following in its flight. And as these cenobites are leaving with Mary's body, we see the Lamarcane cube just floating away. And Vincent does not like this, alright? He needs this to complete his deals. He needs this thing to bring them more bodies, in hopes that maybe his will be restored to what it once was. But as he's throwing a bit of a tantrum, these creatures basically just tell him that it is nearby, and that surely if he just looks around in the right places, he will find it. And Vincent, knowing that these creatures never actually lie, while they kind of have a monkey's paw-esque vocabulary, he knows that they're telling the truth. And this is what he does. He goes around the hospital, he's walking around these different corridors from left to right, to up, to down. And eventually he does find this thing in an empty room, and when he gets down to pick it up, the doors of hell open back up, and the same cenobite walks out. My, Vincent. So soon. What have you brought us for entertainment this time? But I haven't called you. I haven't worked the puzzle. And as he's saying this, the cenobite points up to the placard that shows the name of the hospital, and it says Lamarcane Hospital. Lamarcane himself has designed this entire building to be a configuration, and I just thought that was such an awesome idea. And it actually makes me wonder if maybe the new Hellraiser movie kind of plays off of this a little bit, as I'm pretty sure this happens in one of the buildings itself, and I thought it was just such a cool idea, and such a happening of chance that this man would actually take the exact routes that he would need to open this thing. The entire center. It's a Lamont configuration, when negotiated just so. And Mary is here, Vincent. She turned out to be quite more malleable than we dared hoped. And we see Mary arising from this gateway, and she is just full of different hands and arms coming all all over her body. I don't know if this is all just to bother Vincent, to show him that even this lady, even though she's being tortured in hell, has 100 times the amount of sensation, that she can literally grab anything with her hands tenfold, alright? She's literally made out of hands and is absolutely terrifying. She kind of reminds me of the Grudge, just with her hair hanging over her shoulders. But instead of being a ghoulish creation, she does look like she's healed up well, but obviously this is not what Vincent wants to see at all. And Vincent is carried down, to be plucked from his case of flesh, to be melded in some form more useful to the cenobites. What fingers, what beautiful fingers, Vincent says. He's basically admiring this lady and all of her hands. And this is essentially the end of our story. And like I said, I thought it was one of the more interesting ones, as it actually wraps itself up nice. It's not super incredibly vague like the baby story, and I really just enjoyed the artwork. A lot of soft colors, it looks like a very soft sketch, and as I get farther into these different issues, I can tell that the stories are getting more and more in depth. One of the next ones actually deals with a man dealing with an entire new technology that has also been made by Lamarcand, and that end of the story is extremely dark and sad and honestly terrifying. But yes, everybody, I hope you did enjoy this. I'm sorry if my pronunciation is a little weird. I actually slept on my jaw a little bit funny, and it's like somehow misaligned my teeth a little bit for the day. I don't know exactly what's going on, if my molars are just coming in, but it's kind of making it a bitch to pronounce things the correct way. But what did you guys all think of this HELLRAISER story? Do you think it was well done? Do you think the idea of an entire building being a Le Mans configuration is a little too much, or do you think it is a absolutely fantastical idea? And honestly, I'm hoping in one of these comic books maybe we'll actually get to see the story of Lamarcand. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And if any of you HELLRAISER fans know of a different comic book or a book where we actually do get to meet this man, please tell me down in the comments, as I really like to know this. I recently just finished The Scarlet Gospel, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic. While it wasn't such a horror-esque love story like the first HELLRAISER movie, I think seeing Harry and all these different characters, as well as Pinhead, just being totally fleshed out beings, getting to see so much speech come from them, was such a fantastic idea. And I just want to say thanks for all of you for pushing me to finally get to know this story. But yes, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know down in the comments. If you're new, please subscribe or like the video. It would help me out a great deal. And just know that I am coming with great stories from the heart. Have yourself an absolutely fantastic day, and I will see you on the next episode. Jesus, that was fucking dramatic.